here because I'm sure this is going to be the most curious and suspicious type of a topic, and it will unfold a lot of secrets and interesting facts to us. And for this wonderful session, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Tino de Sa, and I would like all of you to welcome him with a round of applause. Mr. Tino de Sa, and he will be in conversation with Mr. Tejaswi Naik. मैं चाहूँगा तेजस्वी नायक सर के लिए भी तालियां होनी चाहिए. Mr. Tino de Sa and Mr. Tejaswi Naik. I would once again repeat the title for this session. The title is Disrobing of Draupadi, and one for sorrow, two for joy. And before we move ahead, let me just brief you about our guest author and our guest moderator. Firstly, starting with Mr. Tino de Sa. He is the first chairman of Real Estate Regulatory Authority of Madhya Pradesh. He has been the chief secretary of the state of Madhya Pradesh from 2013 up to his retirement in 2017. In the central government, he has served as director in the Ministry of Environment and Forest, controller of the Bhabha Atomic Research Center in Mumbai, and joint secretary in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, where he dealt with foreign trade policy and India's negotiations in the WTO. He has also served in the United Nations for 5 long years as director of the UNIDO Center for South Industrial Cooperation. And now, as the discussant, as the moderator, we have Mr. Tejaswi S. Naik. He is a 2009 batch IAS officer, MP cadre, native of Sirsi, Karnataka. He has done his graduation in Bachelor's of Dental Surgery, BDS, and his interest areas include history, literature, and strategic affairs. He has been the Assistant Collector of Hoshangabad, OIC Wheat Procurement, OIC Aadhaar Implementation, SDM Piparia, SDM Katni, CEO Katni Development Authority, OIC Katni APMC, CEO Annapur, Municipal Commissioner Bhopal, Collector Badwani, Director Budget, Department of Finance Bhopal, and he is presently serving as Collector of Betul. I think we must let them initiate with a thunderous round of applause.
Thank you. We'll now begin the session. I would request Sir to give us a few words about his works. Sir.
Just to introduce these two books of mine, The Disrobing of Draupadi and Other Stories. The anchor said there's something very suspicious, something very titillating about the title, but I think for that you'll have to thank my publishers. It's the name of one of the stories. Actually, that collection of short stories was born of a challenge. The challenge of the Times of India, Right India competition, where we were supposed to write stories that included a line or a paragraph given by a famous author who would give that line or paragraph specifically for that month's competition, and we had to use that unchanged and then write a story about it that would be not more than 3,000 words, and some other rules which the author would like to give. And one of the stories was a story, a line given by Anand Neelkantan, the author of the Bahubali series, etc. And after he gave his line, his condition was surprise me. Apparently I surprised him because he chose that for the first prize. And then that got me off writing, and Mandral Publications very kindly considered the whole set of stories, and I added on one other story also which was not part of the Right India, and that's how the Disrobing of Draupadi, which is the name of one of the stories, and other stories saw the light of day. The second collection, which was launched yesterday, is actually a collection that is, all the stories are set in Goa, and and that's the book that you see there, one for sorrow, two for joy, but they are also short stories. I think we can talk about them as we go on.
I definitely have a lot of questions to ask you, sir. So let's begin with the questions. Sir, you mentioned about the first prize, but you didn't mention about the second prize you have won consecutively now. Which prize?
That story is not yet published. But last month, a story of mine also won in this season's Right India, won the first prize. This line was given by Amish Tripathi, the writer of these. And Amish's condition was a little bit tough. He said, I want a murder mystery, and I want it set in Ujjain of Chandragupta II's time. So well, I wrote a murder mystery set in Chandragupta II's time, set in Ujjain. And the Sihast Mela helped me a lot, because that helped me know Ujjain well, and that won the first prize. So, but that was just last month, not yet published.
We cannot wait to read that, sir. Hopefully, we'll get to read it very soon. Sir, 2 years, 3 books and counting. How do you do it, sir?
I'll have to make a confession, Tejaswi. These 2 books have come out more or less together, but they weren't written in this short period. Yes, the first book that came out was written over a period of a year, but the second book actually had stories that were written earlier to that, while I was still in service. But the publishers took their time, and whatever, for various other reasons, it came out second, and it happened to come out just 2 months after this. But they weren't written in together or in that short period of time.
Sir, you have been a successful bureaucrat, one of the longest serving chief secretaries of MP. You are known for Vallabhbhavan New Building and many other things, many other accomplishments. You have interest in wildlife, and now on to writing, where you are again excelling. So what's the what propels you on? How do you do it?
See, actually, none of this is contradictory. I enjoy my work, so I cannot say no. I have the burdens of work and not. I enjoy my work, and I think my work, my profession, has also helped me a lot in exposing me to various things that have gone into the making of these stories. My interest in wildlife, my interest in heritage conservation, in history and culture, are all, I think, in a sense, interrelated, because I think that these things make a person more sensitive to other people. They make them more sensitive to your environment, to society. Writing is simply a kind of, for me, a kind of catharsis. Because sometimes, if you have either a story idea or wanting to write a poem, for example, about something, it keeps sort of troubling you all the time. It's like that little grain of sand that gets into an oyster's shell, and that keeps troubling the oyster, and the oyster keeps putting its nacre on it, and finally the oyster finds relief when that turns into a pearl, into a smooth round pearl that cannot trouble the oyster anymore. And in that sense, I think are these ideas that till you actually write it, and when you write out a story or you complete a poem, you feel, at least I feel, such a sense of relief that it's out of you, and then you go on to something else.
Do you have to rewrite it a couple of times? Because all your writings are so well rounded off. And of course, you in the beginning mentioned ma'am's contribution also, and kids' contribution also. But how do you ensure that thing?
Yeah.
Or new writers that?
Well, as soon as I get what I think is my first draft out, I do send it to my wife. I send it to my son. My wife gives me her what shall I say, unedited reactions to it. My son will also add, he's a bit of a grammar Nazi, and so he'll say this is wrong, that this, and then of course I think that I'm right, and then we'll argue a bit about it. But yes, I don't just give my first draft off like that. I read and reread and reread, and sometimes I leave it for 2 days and I come back to it. Because I think that one has to respect one's readers too, and you can't just have a first draft and just send it off like that. Because sometimes a word requires to be changed, something needs to be expanded, something needs to be reduced. You find sometimes you've repeated the word several times and you therefore need to use other words. And if you really want to give your readers a good experience, I think you owe it to them to keep rereading your drafts till you really think, now I can't do anything more with this story or this poem. It's done, and now let it go out.
I really enjoyed reading Disrobing of Draupadi. So it may sound a bit odd saying so.
You're referring to the book or the story?
Books.
Okay,
Because my question is on the book.
On the book.
Because book consists of all the rasas or all the issues, if I can say. Like it deals with homophobia, it deals with illicit relations also, it deals with corruption also, it deals with history, it deals with some hatred also, and human angle, the human relations that is missing now, like the one in Bhusaval's story. So, was it a conscious decision, sir, or like it just came about like that?
No, it wasn't really a conscious decision, because each story, when I sat down to write it, it is, as I said, the only thing that I had to work on was the sentence or the paragraph that was given by that famous author. The rest of it was left open, and each story developed in its own way. In fact, some of them, few of them, 2 or 3 of them, when I actually began writing them, I didn't know how they would end. Or perhaps I thought they would end in some other way, but then when you begin writing, the story itself takes you in a different direction, and then they ended differently from how I thought they would end. Some of them I knew the end in the beginning and worked on it like that.
So, though you mentioned that you have picked a line from each of the author, and most of it is only imaginary. All of your story has a piece of you, like the Bombay angle, the Bhusaval angle, the Pachmadi, Goa, and all the stories have these angles. So how much of you do you find in these stories?
There's a lot of me everywhere, because I mean, basically I think that you can only write authentically about something you have seen or experienced. I mean, if you've not experienced it, you cannot write about it. And in fact, I was having a conversation with children who, at one time I was judging a story writing competition for children. And I found some of them writing stories, and we're all influenced by those stories when we are young, Enid Blyton and things like that. But then they began writing about somewhere in England or America, and then I asked them, I said, just because you're writing in English, it doesn't mean you have to set your story there, unless you've actually spent a year or 2 there, or you know the place, because the stories sound completely, unanchored anywhere. So just because you write in English, it doesn't mean you have to write about something you don't know. And even in India, these are places that I've been to, things that I've done. So I feel that you can bring some degree of authenticity if you know a thing that you're writing, if you've experienced something about what you're writing. And yeah, that's what my stories are.
Apart from the humor every now and then, sir, in the story, every story has a twist. Why this persistence with the twist? Because every time it's like a whodunit kind of situation, and you have to expect a twist in the end.
And sometimes I write a story without a twist, so you'll be surprised with it.
That's a twist.
No, actually, I enjoy reading stories with a little twist. O. Henry, Jeffrey Archer. These are people whose short stories I admire greatly, and I like that little twist. Of course, a short story doesn't have to have the twist, But a story without a twist would only work if it's actually also brilliantly written. The language has to be absolutely brilliant, and those slice of life stories. So yes, I mean, if I'm able to write something as brilliantly as that, perhaps I'd get away without a little twist. But in the absence of having that level of skill, I think that little twist adds that interest to a story.
So now that you have mentioned O. Henry, first thing I noticed was like your stories resemble a lot like O. Henry's and Somerset Maugham also, who's known for his short stories. And I know you have been compared to Ruskin Bond also for his stories. So sir, all these comparisons, and also in somewhere it has been written that your stories read like mini movie scripts. One of your friends, Shobha Day, has written that. So, which one of these is your favorite author?
Which of the authors are my favorite authors? It's very difficult to say because my interest in writing itself is not my interest in reading is not restricted to short stories. I write only short stories. I haven't attempted a novel yet. I would like to write a novel, but the proper idea has to come. Something is still developing in my mind. But that doesn't mean I like to read only short stories. I like to read a wide variety of things, mostly fiction. I like crime thrillers very much. I like short stories. So it's difficult to say who is my favorite author because I enjoy very many of them.
Sir, about the humor part, I really fell down from my chair when I read that comment in Anmol Kamat's story. Where did the reservoir go? Did it wear a pant and run away or something like that? And then there was this instance in the second book wherein Damu and the other boy, they are having a look at Mary. I forget her name. Moonlight Mary. And suddenly Damu bolts. I could really imagine that whole situation. It was so funny. Sir, my question would be, who is Anmol Kamath?
He's partly me, let me be honest.
So here you have Mr. Anmol Kamath from the Field Vision short story. The secret has been realized.
So yeah.
So it's from your probation time, sir?
Yes.
Mostly in
say,
Chhattisgarh?
well, to be quite honest, it's not just probation. Otherwise you'll start catching my commissioner who was under whom I trained. No, but it's a collection of experiences of when I was a probationer, SDO, and as additional collector. I would say a kind of concentration of various things during that period. But I mean, please don't catch my bosses for it because my real bosses were very nice people.
Somewhere in between Bhusawal and Bombay also come in. Anmol Kamath's background.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, sir. Sir, your second book, though I have gone through it just 3 days back, it has been an eye-opener. It's such a joy to read this book. All the characters seem as though they are around us. Like I happen to be coming from the neighboring region from where you belong to. Moonlight Mary and other stories. How I think it might have taken over a period of time. It might have developed. That's what I can try to imagine. How have you come about these characters? How have you built these characters, sir?
Actually, when I set out to write these stories, Tejaswi, I hadn't intended that the chief character in each would be a woman. That wasn't the case. It was only when these stories got written that I suddenly noticed that yes, the chief character in each was a woman. But ideas for these stories were actually floating around in my mind for a long time. For example, now, that miracle for Miracle for Rosita. That is an idea that for 20 years kept troubling me, but I never wrote the story. Till I actually sat down then to write it. That was the first story of this that I wrote. And they weren't, of course, written in the order in which they appear. They were written in, I don't know, haphazard order. And after I had written about 4 or 5 stories, it then struck me that these could be strung together with that popular rhyme, 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for girl, 4 for boy. And then I put them in that order and, brought them out. But these stories were written over quite, I would say, over 3 years, long period of time.
Sir, you have mentioned this term called as Goa Goans, Bombay Goans. I would like to add one more, other Goans. So, which one do you consider yourself as?
I'm another Goan. Which is the truth.
So it's a Madhya Pradesh one.
Yes, sir. Incidentally, MP has had 3 Konkanis as CS.
Yes.
All of them would be other Goans.
I would think our first 2 chief secretaries, and then myself, both Mr. Narona and Mr. Kamath.
I consider myself also as an other Goan for my region. Because I can so relate to it. Whenever you go back in the summer holidays, the way the locals look at you, and the way you look at them, it's all there in your books. So you put in a lot of knowledge and information into your stories, like so much so that at times you take a detour to take pain to explain the people what it is about. It also makes for very interesting reading. For example, who are East Indians? Many wouldn't even know or realize East Indians are actually the ones that you are mentioning. So how does it come about? Even the Macau story also, so many other stories.
See, all these are little snippets of fact, and I love history, as you know, Tejaswi, you love history. I love history, and I think that sometimes, without seeming too pedantic, because I don't like stories that start teaching you things, like they were actually a history lesson or something like that. You just tacked on the story. No, I don't like stories or even books like that. The story must move as a story does. But if you can add on some interesting information by just sort of, moving a little bit here or there, I think that adds to the value.
Like this plate on the book?
Yeah, that's a Macau plate.
This features the short story Aunt.
The Edna, I think the
Laura,
Edna and the willow pattern plate, platter. Yeah, I've forgotten the name of my own story, but Prashant remembers it. Yeah.
So that means.
I designed the cover, by the way.
So congratulations. It is also the full plate here and the broken plate in between.
At the back, yes.
So that means Konkani is older than Marathi.
Let's not start on that.
Right,
Yes, we don't need to be.
So question is passed. So definitely this book about Goa is so much about Goa, and I know a lot of people these days think only about Goa as beaches and holidays and whatnot. But this also gives the reader an insight into the other part of Goa, which is equally beautiful or more beautiful. But it also has such a rich history. Like when you mention the aunt casting a spell on Damu, sorry, not Damu, the main protagonist of the. She
on somebody else.
Yeah,
Yes.
she uses chili to ward off the evil spirits. But I did ask you before also. Chili is also used in Hindu traditions to ward off evil. But again, chili itself is not Indian. So there is so many inputs regarding cultures and civilizations. So
In fact, since chilies did come, as you yourself pointed out, to were brought by the Portuguese to India. It came first to Goa, and now then this custom of using chilies and throwing them into the fire, probably it spread to the rest of India from Goa.
Could be, sir.
Could have actually spread there to remove the evil eye.
That could be one of the points for Konkani being older than Goa. Marathi. Also, sir, this legend of siren in Europe and the Nag Purush in India, you find the clash here in Goa in one of your stories. How did you think about that story?
No, actually, I only linked it up because Moonlight Mary to me. Actually, the character is more or less based on somebody whom I had seen as a child, and that person died. That person was not even in Goa actually. It was a person somewhere else in my childhood in Peshawar. But she actually died when I was about 5 or 6 years old. She was some kind of shadowy figure. But the things that we used to imagine about her, and she probably was a very normal, regular kind of person, but the things we imagined about her is what I tried to reflect in Moonlight Mary. And I thought the only way I could do that, it would be impossible to write that story if I wrote it from an adult point of view, because then Moonlight Mary would be a very ordinary character. And that is why I wrote that story from the point of view of a child, because that is how I saw this person and the mystery that sort of surrounded her. And when Damu thinks that she is a mermaid, and that her feet turn into a fish tail. Yes, the uncle also, and then the other guy says, no, I knew somebody. Because these are stories you hear in the village, and everybody then, and these are actually stories that people tell in villages.
Actually, the coastal India has not many such stories.
So, in that sense, these are a reflection of, because to me, Goa has never been hotels and beaches and things like that. To me, Goa is just my native place, my village. And I actually know more about, I would say, the villages of Goa than the tourist places of Goa. I know very little about the tourist places of Goa. It is the villages that I experienced where I spent my childhood. And that is what I try to reflect in these stories.
Before I head to the audience, sir, I have a couple of more questions. Sir, this Goa book, I know it is not the last. I will ask you later about that. But I hope it connects all the Goans or the companies who are outside Goa and yet linked to Goa. There are so many of such people outside. So I wish you the best on that, sir. But I would also request you to give guidance as to what should new aspiring writers do. What is your suggestion to them if they want to write?
My suggestion always is, which is the advice that I try and take myself, is that if you want to write, write. Because I know it sounds being trite, but actually it's true. Even me, when I sometimes one is lazy and one keeps writing in one's head, and one doesn't actually get down to, if you use paper and pencil, yes, but now I use a laptop. Sorry, not a laptop, a desktop. I find a laptop a little bit uninspiring, but a desktop is what I enjoy working on. But actually, you've got to get yourself to write, and you don't write, nothing happens. But when you actually begin writing, whatever it is, then the inspiration begins to flow more. It may not be a good draft, you will correct it, you will do, but you need to actually get down to write. So I would say one would be write, and second is write authentically. Don't write about things that you don't experience, you haven't experienced, or you don't feel about, or you've not seen. Write about something that you have experienced, and it'll come out authentically far more. That's all that I would say.
Sir, मैं एक दफा फिर से माफी चाहूँगा आपको interrupt करने के लिए.
Just last.
Actually, we have to, sir, wrap up at 5.
Oh.
So I would request you to
Not
please
at 5,
open
okay.
it for audience right
So
now.
the last question would be, Actually, I forgot the question. We should go to the audience.
That's a better option.
I'll ask you later.
Okay.
Okay. Those who want to ask the question can raise.
Good afternoon,
Good
everyone.
afternoon, guys.
I am the irrepressible question answer, and I will ask you the question. And the question is that you have said you have written short stories and you're thinking about a novel. But I know, and many people here also know, you have written an amazing set of poems. And I want you to somehow knit that poetry into the novel. Because otherwise you're saying you can't find a publisher. I don't know about not finding a publisher. I think you will find a publisher. I think they'll come and run and want to publish your work. But I do suggest that why don't you include your poetry in a novel as a question?
Thank you, Kelly. I know poetry.
Simpler words में उनका कहना था मुझे कुछ नहीं पता पर आप करिए बस. Okay, moving on to our second question quickly. Anyone who wants to ask the second question?
A decade or so, there's been a lot of writing which revolves around our mythologies, particularly the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. There have been retelling of the stories in a modern context. There's been kind of trying to find a locus in the modern contemporary times, the old with those characters. I'm just wondering, why is this phenomena, as a student of literature, as a teacher of literature, I also teach precisely this bit of Mahabharata as an English honors text of the Disrobing of Draupadi. Why is this sudden interest in mythology and retelling of mythology? What's your take on this?
My take, I think because you see, just like I was saying, when people write, they need to write about something they know or experience. Similarly, when people read, they enjoy reading about something which subconsciously they already have a contextual knowledge of. And because mythology is something that everybody, even illiterate people, know about. We know about our mythology and myths, and So when you get a modern story or a different version of it or a twist about it, you already have a context in which to put it, and therefore it interests you all the more. So I think that is the reason why books like these are so popular.
Thank you, sir. And now we will take the last question for the day, third question, and the very last question. Anyone else who wants to ask another question? Okay, no questions on the floor?
No, there is one question.
There is one
Sir,
question.
I believe you have already started writing.
Yeah.
You want to share something or it's a secret?
Well, no, it's not a secret. But what I am working on three things actually simultaneously. One is almost complete. One which is complete is a novel for young children. Young adults, older children. A novel for older children. But one is another collection of short stories. But I know the one that you're referring to. I am writing a history of Goa also, a readable history of Goa. So that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. It has been wonderful having you here, listening to you.